If nobody is illegal, then what exactly is going on with the Channel migrant crossings? So over the last few years, migrants have been crossing the English Channel on small boats to seek refuge here in the UK. In 2022 alone, there were 45,000 men, women and children who crossed the Channel in a small boat to enter Britain. Now, entering the country in this way is illegal, but many have argued that because it is in order to seek asylum in the UK, it cannot be illegal. Now, with such a high asylum grant rate for these types of migrants, it's obviously no surprise why people would want to risk the perilous journey. So according to the government, there are currently a number of safe and legal routes to seek asylum, even though they're quite limited. Some of these routes are restricted to people from specific countries, such as Afghanistan and Ukraine, while other routes only accept limited numbers. So currently there is the UK resettlement scheme, which prioritizes those from regions in conflict. There is the community sponsorship scheme, which is for local community groups to provide accommodation and support for refugees. There's the refugee family reunion for partners and children under the age of 18 of those who've already been granted protection in the UK. And there's also the mandate resettlement scheme to resettle refugees who have a close family in the UK who can offer a home. Now, the government insists that the UK operates safe and legal routes with the UNHCR. However, the organisation insists that there is currently no mechanism through which refugees can approach this organisation with the intention of seeking asylum in the UK. So why does the situation seem so bad with these migrant crossings? At the moment, migrants are being housed in crowded detention centres, on barges, and in hotels at great cost to the country. The overwhelming situation has meant that the government is spending upwards of £6 billion a day to house these migrants. And the slow processing times has meant that 82% of Channel migrants who applied for asylum since 2018 are still waiting for even an initial decision. One of the problems we see with this debate is the prevalence of the phrase, "no one is illegal." It's become popular amongst groups of people who have advocated for refugees and migrants present in the country unlawfully. In the case of migrants crossing the English Channel, it's been used to advocate for these people to be allowed safe refuge here in the UK. But saying no one is illegal is like saying no one is photosynthesis. It's empty, it's meaningless, and it's also misleading. The definition of illegal in the case of boat migrants is anyone entering the country outside of immigration controls. That means not entering via an official port of entry like an airport. It's like someone entering through the back door instead of the front. And I know there's a joke in there somewhere, but my mother is watching. Unfortunately for the bastion of competence that is our Home Secretary, she's failed to stress this point, and this has meant that the national conversation around these Channel crossings has moved from the impact on society to how mean we are for demonizing poor migrants. So here are my takes on what's wrong with the current situation. So firstly, they're effectively jumping the queue, which is a cardinal sin to any Brit. So why should people entering the country illegally be allowed to do it? How is it fair that people who have the ability to pay people smugglers to ferry them across the Channel from France or Belgium in order to take advantage of our lax, broken asylum system deserve more sympathy than a widowed mother stuck in Syria? Now, I'm not saying these people aren't unfortunate or even desperate. And unlike many of the pundits monopolizing this conversation, I've actually seen what real poverty and desperation looks like. Surely, by virtue of being able to jump the queue in this way, there are more people who are deserving of British hospitality. What about the people who don't have the resources to even make it to Europe in the first place? Unfortunately, some people just don't see it that way. The second problem is, who are these people and what values are they bringing over? What if some of the migrants in question are homophobic? Or has it never occurred to people that some of these migrants from certain parts of the world may not have the warmest feelings towards gender pronouns or Pride Month or transsexuals? I knew a man growing up who made the trip across the Mediterranean who ended up not in the UK, but in Europe. And trust me when I tell you, he would not be looking very fondly on anything to do with LGBT-related issues. Are those the kind of people that we should really let into the country without vetting them? We simply cannot be this naive. It's no surprise that people who reduce this debate to "no one is illegal" pay little attention to the issues of social integration, social cohesion, and national security in communities who experience a rise in these types of migrants. It screams of extreme privilege and entitlement, and yet the same people have the audacity to posit themselves as champions of the working class. Unlike many countries in Europe who have ID card systems, the UK does not. This has meant that many of these migrants that are released into the country get lost in the underbelly of society without any way of tracking them. We don't know who they are, we don't know where they are, and we don't know what they believe. You know who gets the most annoyed by illegal immigration? Legal migrants. That's why it comes as no surprise that the "no one is illegal" brigade have never actually had any interaction with the British immigration system. Maybe, just maybe, they need to queue for hours in the blistering heat of Accra outside of the British High Commission for them to really understand how infuriating it is when people trivialize the process and experience of migrating to Britain. It's a pity that it takes someone from the outside to make people really understand how much of a privilege it is to live in this country, despite all of its problems. So currently what's being done about the Channel migrant crossings is the illegal immigration bill. Now, once it's operationalized, the Illegal Migration Act will mean that people who come to the UK illegally will not have a right to stay, and instead they will be liable to be returned either to their home country or relocated to a safe third country. Now, the new legislation also prevents people who come to the UK illegally from misusing modern slavery safeguards and introduces a law to stop them making spurious legal challenges to frustrate their removal. Now, in my opinion, this is a step in the right direction. Of course, it's not perfect. The Shadow Secretary, Esther Karkue, raised a very valid point when she said that the lack of return agreements with other countries will just increase the asylum backlog with even more people in costly hotels. Nonetheless, I love living in this country and I'm extremely grateful. But I don't want to see this country destroyed by people who don't even realize what a privilege it is to be able to live here.